Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. And thank you especially to the patrons who help make this possible for you every single day with their support at patreon.com/SW7x7. So this is episode 3642. This is the last of 7 episodes where I have been taking time to reflect on my journey as a Star Wars podcaster over the last 10 years. Our official anniversary is on July 7th, so it's just around the corner. But yeah, these episodes have been a little bit different, and I'm very grateful to you for checking them out. Today, the idea is around, the word golden, basically. And it was just the consideration of the possibility that we are now living in a golden age of Star Wars and have been for the last 10 years. And I gotta say, over the course of these 10 years, by and large, it does feel like it has been a golden age of Star Wars storytelling. Certainly, I think, one of the things we've talked about over the years is just the hierarchy of Star Wars storytelling. Certainly, more people are into movies than any other form of Star Wars storytelling, and then you narrow it down a little bit with live action, you narrow it down a little bit further with animation, you narrow it down even further with books and even further with comics, and so on and so forth. And so, by that measure, the fact that we have gotten as much live action Star Wars as we have over the past 10 years is absolutely astounding, especially when you consider what happened over the course of it's nearly 40 years prior, like 38 years prior to that. Like we got, 8 movies, if you count 9, I guess, technically, if you count the Ewok movies and the Clone Wars movie, right? And then, what was it, 5 at that time? 5 seasons of the Clone Wars, and even then, Gennady Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, and then 2 seasons of Ewoks and 1 of droids, and then of course the Ewok movies, Caravan of Courage and the Battle for Endor. Yeah, I mean, the amount of Star Wars that we've gotten in live action over the last, and animation too, over the last 10 years has radically eclipsed the amount of Star Wars storytelling that we got in the 30 odd years prior. And by and large, I think it's been good. Rogue One, initially had its troubles during production, but boy, oh boy, did they turn out to make a fantastic movie out of that after all. Solo, for all of its bumps and challenges along the road, is still a very fun ride, and every time I see it on the screen, I smile like I can't help it. Like, I enjoy the heck out of it. So are there Star Wars storytelling things that went off better than others? For sure, absolutely, that's the case. And are there groups of people in the fandom now who are definitely advocates for the Book of Boba Fett and saying what a great show that was, advocates for the Ahsoka series or the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Everybody has something that they can love about Star Wars right now, and it doesn't have to be just these movies that we got once every 3 years, and hopefully as many people liked them as possible, and it was this seminal moment in Star Wars storytelling. Hopefully it worked out that way. But now we live in such a different media environment. It just doesn't work out like that anymore. So the fact that we have more Star Wars live action storytelling, and in different genres, and even just in different animation styles too, like the animation style of Star Wars Resistance compared to Star Wars Rebels and The Bad Batch, they're all very different shows. There has really been something amazing for everyone in Star Wars storytelling over the past 10 years. And even reflecting on the other categories that we've talked about, the diversity in our storytellers, the range of genres that we've been able to explore, the timeline, the different eras of the timeline that we're now able to explore, and what that opens up for us. all of this has ultimately summed itself up to be a golden age of Star Wars. So here we are 10 years after the reboot of the canon, and I gotta say, I am like I'm not necessarily like 10 of 10 no notes about everything, but I'm pretty much 9 of 10 on things. And that's about as good as you could have hoped for the new stewards of Lucasfilm to have done over the past 10 years, right? Like that there's a lot of tremendous things. There have been a lot of big swings that maybe didn't necessarily connect, but it's still all the better for the fact that the big swings were taken, and you get the idea that they are continuing to be willing to take big swings as they move on into this second decade of life without George Lucas at the helm. It is a really strange thing to think about, but it's it's even stranger when you consider the George Lucas talk show and Connor Ratliff's portrayal of post-sale George Lucas. Like it's good fun for sure. But by and large, I'm very pleased with what's happened over the last 10 years with Star Wars storytelling, and I hope you feel the same way too. I do want to hear from you though. Like, do you really feel that way? And if you don't, like, hopefully the reason why is because you have just genuine problems with the storytelling, like genuine, critiques and criticisms, and not because somehow Star Wars has ruined your childhood or abandoned the ideals that you thought it stood for, which, by the way, if that's what you're thinking, that's probably not true. I think it's kind of kept the same ideals all along, and it's just been a better it's been expressing them better, right? I think that's ultimately what it amounts to. It has become more of itself. It has become a better espouser of the ideas that it always seemed to, want to represent. So these past 10 years have been really, really progressive in that regard, and I think it has, a lot farther to go, but I'm hopeful that they are, making steps in the right direction. So, yeah, that's what I've been thinking about as far as whether this is a golden age of Star Wars. I think the answer really is yes. I'd love to hear what you think. So comments are right there for YouTube and for the Q&A section on Spotify. If you're catching this anywhere else, then head over to the blog post for the show's episode at sw7x7.com and let me know what you think. And that is going to do it for this episode of the podcast. If you enjoy the show, please do help me in getting it into the ears and eyes of more Star Wars fans. You can do that by leaving ratings and reviews on your favorite app if you haven't done that already, by liking and subscribing and commenting and following and joining and all the different options that the apps offer you. Just by telling people that this exists for them is helpful. And you can even help me create this daily dose of Star Wars joy on a regular basis. You can do it for just the price of a cup of coffee, or less or more, depending on what works for you. And you can learn more about that at patreon.com/SW7X7. And it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode, as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.